Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform and incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka RegenBen, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Hello and welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. I have a friend from clear across the other side of the world today. Michael Twist is joining me here. What part of Australia are you in, Michael?
I'm in southeast Queensland, Australia, about 20 minutes off the coast from Fraser Island. It's a little bit that sticks out the side of Queensland near the bottom. You'll be able to find us really easy. So
cool. So yeah, we're in two different places here, as it typically usually is. That there's so many really cool, amazing regenerative entrepreneurs out there across the world, and we're kind of this small group spread around the entire world doing amazing work. I got to meet you over LinkedIn, and we got chatting about economics and all sorts of different ways that we might be able to move our economic system into a more regenerative one. And I would like to kind of open the question up and open our kind of storytelling process up by getting to know how you woke up this morning and really what gets you excited to do the work that you do.
I woke up this morning. I woke up this morning to my dog. Actually, my dog wakes me up about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Says I want to go outside, but right about then, my eyes pop open and I go, I know I'm doing this morning. I know I'm coming up to talk to you, and I was kind of excited about that and a little nervous. But I love talking about the whole regenerative agriculture thing. I've been investigating and researching it for so long. It's sort of what I do every day that I'm not at work. My spare time is just full of it. It's full of all of what everybody else is doing and how they're making it work. But as for how I got to where I am, starts with a little accident in about 2015. Nothing serious, just derailed what I did for a living and made me look around for a new career path. And I jokingly asked the question, what's the coolest job you can do? I mean, saving the world sounded so good. Maybe I've watched one too many superhero movies. I thought saving the world sounded like a great career. And then all I did was go, well, how do you do that? So then that's how I started researching like the regen ag movement, environmental restoration, and why? Why isn't it all happening faster? Why isn't everything getting fixed? I mean, we've had people like Alan Savory involved in this regenerative culture for like 70 years. Why aren't they? Why hasn't it happened? And that's where I got started. I got stuck into that question of why hasn't every environment been restored? Why hasn't it become the driving force behind everything we're doing when we're so dependent on it? And that's sort of where I came from, and how I got to where I am was just looking at everybody else's work. I mean, I spent like 3.5, 4 months just watching TED Talks on everything from environmental restoration to global economics to the injustice between nations and the crisis that seems to be looming with the inequality between nations. all of that stuff sort of rolls up together into this. If you keep reducing down the why, keep asking why, what's the root cause of it? And you keep going down why and why and why and why until you can get to a one-word sort of answer. And it seemed like profitability was at the heart of it all. If you look at what's been done in the last like 30, 40 years, especially last 30, 40 years of growth, profitability is driving the changes we're seeing around us, and the scale is accelerating. I mean, when you can raise literally hundreds of millions of dollars to try and get people to go to Mars, and yet there's people on the street in your suburb who can't buy lunch. There's profitability is making this possible, but it's also driving the discord, the separation between the haves and the have-nots as well. So it was just this amazing thing that needed to be looked at a little further. And I have a big imagination. So I went looking for a why and a how to sort of what could we do to just move the body of the puppet a little further towards what we need it to be rather than where we're at. And what would that need to look like? If you imagine the world 300, 400, 500 years from now, and we've been successful, right? Imagine what success looks like. For me, it was we've regreened the deserts that we've created in the last 200 years. We've maybe even got to the point where some of those inland seas, there's that much regrowth around the surrounding areas around the outside of edges of Australia. Imagine if water started to flow towards the center of the country 500 years from now, and we could see that inland sea starting to happen again. I mean, wow, yeah. What would it take to make that happen, and what would have to be there? And for me, it was about this connection, like looking at the connection between what people do for a living at that point. You think industrialization and technology has got to a point where it's self-sustaining, regenerative, and all the amazing things that that's doing in 500 years' time. But what do people do for a living if the robots do all the work? What's meaningful in life?
It's something I've been thinking. It's something I've been thinking about, this whole AI part of the equation that's we're bringing to already very complex world, right? What does it mean when that really starts to, for lack of a better word, come online, right? And start to affect us in more and more deeply impactful ways. And maybe that's not the question or conversation that we should be going, but I love the question mentality of what you brought. You had a life experience, which so often happens with entrepreneurs and why they get into their business. A transition from what they were doing before to what they truly want to do, and ask the question: how could I change? How could I be a superhero? Right? How could I save the world? And what part could I play in that? I think that's right there. And maybe we could linger on this for just a moment. In your thought process, because I know every entrepreneur tackles this challenge in the early stages of a business different than the other person, right? I'm going to handle it. The way I handled that question is like I went and interviewed, and that's what started this business, was this podcast, right? I started interviewing people in regenerative entrepreneurs largely in this space, and I tried to get to know and understand what their challenges were. How could I possibly be someone that's helping them move their needle forward? And I just kept on asking them questions, and then it came to light. And I've had friends that asked that question in a different way. So how did you go about in early stages finding the question, or first, what was the question that, again, kind of reframe that question for us that you're asking, and how you went about kind of tackling it, if you can, for a moment? Because you sound like a very research, and a very thoughtful person. I want to get this understanding.
Okay. The question was, how do you make rebuilding and caring for biodiversity profitable at the grassroots to the landowners and workers, and reward at the same rate in all countries? Because we have two major issues that we're dealing with that I want to contribute towards, and that's the climate change needs the environmental restoration dealt with, but the inequality between nations is as dangerous as climate change. I mean, as the resources, that was that question, how do you connect these two things, caring for rebuilding biodiversity and profitability, but at a grassroots and equally around the globe? And that's sort of where I went with the if you could achieve those two things, that these people who are standing in remote regional areas where all they've got is stuff that grows, but they perceive themselves as poor, but they're standing in the very environments that we need to save, restore, and increase. That is the gold in our planet, is its ability to sustain life. I mean, you look at our solar system, where else can we go? And don't tell me Mars is suitable. I mean, you can't walk outside where you won't be able to go, take your shirt off and go lay in the sun, you'll cook and die. It's not going to be a fun place to live. I mean, I'm sorry. The most valuable thing this planet has to offer is its ability to sustain life. And I believe that our biodiversity is key to maintaining that livable environment. It's got to be. I mean, it worked in the past. Redesigning why would you redesign the wheel when what we had worked so well? Why not just learn how to manage those environments and make that drive a part of our economy? That was the next part. Make it drive a part of our economy. The value in our living environments is so essential to saving the future of humanity that this ton of carbon that they grew in their backyard represents the same amount of success and is as important, regardless of which backyard you're growing it into. Whether you're in back of America, back blocks of Africa, back blocks of Australia, suburbia where I am, if you grow a ton of organic carbon into your backyard, it benefits that whole world, our whole world, equally. So why shouldn't they be rewarded equally for that life growing into that environment? And then you've got to get to the price. I've watched a lot about how the UN and a lot of these big think tanks are trying to come up with a price for carbon. But these guys could take the next 20, 30 years trying to make that decision.
Right.
We don't have 20, 30 years to think about that. Let's just make it really simple and put a price on it that is representative of how much money was being made. I was standing in 2020, looking back at 19. That's when I fixed the value of the dollar to, was 2019. I looked back at that and I went, okay, let's take the GDP of the world, gross domestic product of the whole world, and put it up against carbon emissions.
Right.
How much money did the world make as a community, one community, we're all one people. So how much did they make putting that CO2 into the atmosphere? And it's really high. Like in US dollars, they made on about $3,857 per ton of carbon released into the atmosphere. And you think about carbon credits, they're offering anywhere from $28 to like $45. I've heard higher, but it doesn't represent. It's not representative, but it's market driven because this is what the market can bear. But bear in mind that market, that industrialized market, is what's driving our destruction. If the market has to grow large enough to pay for all the restoration work, how much environment will be left? But if you turn that on its head, if you turn it on its head and say, we're not going to deal with the market, there's enough people applying pressure to make them go green right now. The biggest problem we have is not enough funding for restoration projects everywhere. So how about we skip all those industrialized businesses and say, support us by letting us buy our product with this currency in the future. But in the meantime, little grassroots organizations, little environmental tech companies, little environmental restoration projects, community groups regrowing, their local forests and things like that. If you make it profitable for them to do the work, if you put a price at we ended it up to $4,000 a ton divided by a bunch of people. There's the landowners, the workers, us, the government gets a bit, and there's a residual payment that pays off into the future. How it all knits together. There's something for everybody in it. But we reward at the same rate in all countries in the same currency. I mean, this is like a carbon currency that has a known price that anybody anywhere restoring a living environment could earn, and then they can start trading with one another. We don't even have to look at big business yet. We're just talking about finding 1,000 pieces of land and water, because you can do this on land or in water, and they all earn the same currency as well as whatever they're doing. So whatever they're earning for wages, they still get that. The boss is required to keep paying them what they're entitled to. And this is an as well as. So if you guys join up, start participating, generate the currency and get it into market, then you can start buying, selling and trading between one another, but with a stable currency, something that nobody can mess with. Because I believe that a stable currency is a really useful tool on economics across borders. At the moment, as we go forward, like if you see these countries going into decline, what's that going to do to the value of these dollars? How much do you think the dollars of these countries that are going underwater is going to be worth once the waters are lashing across the top? So we say that it's still worth the same as it was in 2019, regardless of what happens next.
Right.
We'll revisit that in 2039 and say, hey, look, your country's desertifying. We don't want to punish you for something you might not have caused. We want to give you an opportunity. Maybe a sinking country, we could turn it into, we could start looking at coral reef restoration across the top of it, increase the biodiversity, and put a dollar value on what the country becomes next. That in itself could generate a revenue stream that might be beneficial to the community. This is the sort of stuff that you can apply to.
Right. So when you were kind of coming to that understanding and trying to build out how you could find a way towards a currency system that is based on our natural capital, right? You came to this conclusion, it seems like, towards the gold standard, right? And so help me work through that understanding in the audience, through that understanding of how you tied it to that and kind of locked it off, and why that's important to be able to do that.
Well, a really short explanation of what the gold standard was and can be is that gold used to have a set price and you could exchange it for goods and service, but paper currencies had this stamp of the gold on it that enabled it to be recognized by other banks, and they'd know the value of the currency every day of the week. The gold standard provided a way to trade across borders using paper money before we had phones and telegraph. But it was still a very useful tool. I mean, a stable price meant that you could trust what you were holding. And world markets at the moment can fluctuate day to day and make it difficult to do business sometimes. And you could do it right up a contract that's supposed to run for 5 years, and somewhere in the middle, the economy goes out of whack, and your business model may end up on the wrong side of that. But if you were operating inside something like what the gold standard used to be, you could set yourself a dollar value and you could work within it. And this is the same theory, that it was a useful tool in the past. It was one of the most stable forms of economics over the last 400 to 600 years. Gold and silver standards have impacted our economy and been used to stabilize banking. And gold actually coming into the market consistently grew at about 2% a year, which made it really good for economic growth, sort of to frame itself around. So, but we're looking we need a boom. We need a rush in rebuilding and caring for living environments. And we need it at a scale that's going to be dramatic. So we need a gold rush mentality. We need a environmental restoration to become the gold rush. Bitcoin stimulated this mining industry, this whole blockchain mining thing that was just a nightmare, energy-wise and environmental impact-wise. But imagine if that was environmental restoration got that shot in the arm of everything being fixed and repaired and taken care of, and the guys on the ground making small fortunes. But it's got a long-term edge to it, where that idea of the currency and everyone in the world having the opportunity to go and get something, then it can drive that change. A stable price across borders is useful. It's easy to see and deal with. And I don't know if I answered the question or not. We made it based on the gold standard because I researched for a solution that had worked in the past. I looked for a large economic system that had a long track record of success.
Right.
I mean, and a part of these payments, part of the currency going into circulation is that the land and the workers have a residual payment that turns up for 100 years. It's only a small amount each year, but it's accumulative. This year, you're getting one payment. If you worked on the same property for 2 years, there'll be 2 residual payments in the following year, and so on and so forth. In 60 years' time, you could have 60 residual payments turning up a year. They're not very big, but you get 60 of them. It might buy a couple, it'll add to your retirement. But the part of it that's connected to the land gets sold with the land. So when the land changes hands, the value of the property is one thing, but the value of those residual payments is another part of the equation that could increase the value of the land, but also increases that urge and understanding that you need to take care of this for that payment to continue. So we're linking
right.
long-term restoration to the future of our planet 100 years into the future. We're trying to reach through time and make sure that it's still there. You don't want them to restore it and then bulldoze it and turn it into suburbia. That's sort of not the point.
Right. So when we first had a conversation, I thought it was, and I'm noticing this question about how can we bring our entire economic system to to the natural capital that has been held in a commons for so long, right? It's a commons, and the natural commons is being depleted, and we don't really know. It's a tragedy of the commons in a lot of ways, right? And how do we get beyond that? And there's many people that are trying to solve this question, and they're going about it in all sorts of different ways. One way that distinguish you from others that I've talked to on this topic has been that kind of going back and researching what systems have worked well, and seeing that the gold standard, which was attached to a natural resource, an extractive one at that, but a natural resource that actually stabilized. How could we attach our understanding, and we have new technology to possibly do this now, right? To attach that again, a natural resource, but one that is not extractive but regenerative, right? And so I think what you have, the thought that you have here has great merit, and it's an exciting one. So tell us how you're getting this out into the world, and share with us what your big goals and steps are for the global climate dollar, as you call it.
The steps we're working on at the moment, we have a web page in development, which was quite large and complex. We went into a contract last year to get somebody to build it, and we almost made it. We ran out. They went above and beyond. The team that were working on it ran overtime by a mile and never asked for any more money. But eventually they ran out of charity, and I ran out of money. So fundraising is a part of what I'm doing now, and that's okay. We got a lot of important stuff done. We've got all of our exchange rates sorted out, so that'll be there on the webpage. We've got working the data entry stuff is almost complete, just needs a bit of system testing. So what we're working towards is a really simple environmental evaluation system that can be done by landowners and workers at the grassroots. Like, you guys go out, draw a map of your property, work out what is the best representative samples and locations you could do on that property, go out, count your trees, measure your above ground samples, below ground samples, collect the samples, send them off, get them tested in a laboratory, and then load that data into the system. Part of our startup theory is that if we can get 1,000 locations, so thousands of pieces of land and water into the system, we can raise the money to build what we need next. But by getting in the system, what it means is that any work you do from that point moving forward that accumulates organic carbon means that when our currency is ready, running, ready to go, and the idea is that you do your evaluation at about the same time of year each time, so same season, same sort of environmental conditions, sort of stuff we're aiming for, redo that evaluation, and whatever you've accumulated will generate the currency and pass it on to the landowners and workers at that point. But by getting in the system earlier means that any work that you've achieved a positive outcome environmentally, you're in the system already for this. The goal would be to try and find like 1,000 of these projects anywhere in the world. That's the best. What I love most about this is it's any environmental restoration project, whether you're a government or a guy who just has a little 5-acre block, and you've gone hippie and you want to live on there, and you've got your goat and your chickens and everything. That's exactly the point, that these guys who are actually off grid doing this work are saving our planet. These are the guys who are actually on the ground doing the work. Why shouldn't they be supported? These are the guys who have the local knowledge of how to make it work in their own backyard. We should be supporting these people. So
definitely,
that's the link. That's that link to the grassroots. So if we can get these guys to get into the baseline, get this little pieces of the webpage are going to get finished. That's my biggest problem at the moment, is getting that webpage finished. I have started doing it myself. I will, if I have to, I will learn how, and I'll do the whole thing myself.
Yes,
just because I can. I will work it out. I can learn. I can learn the basics in anything. They say you can learn the basics in anything in 90 days, and I've done that over and over through the learning process of getting into this. And if I have to, I will learn how to code just so I can do the web page, because I can. It's just a matter of applying yourself to something, and I love that stuff. I yell, I scream, and I curse and swear, and then I go and do it anyway. It's just a process. But we can do this. But I would like to put together a small team of people to help get that piece finished, so that we can get this in the market and get this happening faster. What am I offering at the moment would be one of the things I'd like to mention is what I'm offering, because we're a startup, we have no money. I'm offering tenure within the organization is what we're aiming at, as a way to entice people to come and say, hey, I want to help. The university system uses tenure for really good professors that they want to have stay with them. And I'm offering that for people who get in and are willing to put the time and effort in to bring this thing to life and get it into the market. I'm offering tenure within the company in our currency for life. Like I'm looking, because I know how much currency is going to come out of this. And it's a big number. We're aiming at trying to produce about $10 trillion over the next 20 years, which sounds like a lot of money, but the shortfall environmentally is closer to between 100 and 150 trillion dollars over that period. So $10 trillion that just goes into the hands of people who are rebuilding and caring for biodiversity is a drop in the bucket of what we actually need to make this happen. So, So we need a lot more than that. I'm hoping for mimics. I'm hoping for other companies to come on board and other versions of this to come on board, because we do not know which one is going to succeed. I believe that this has potential and could, but yeah, that tenure for anybody who wants to become a part of this is open door at the moment. Come and find me, and I'll walk you through what it means and how it can change where we're going. And we're talking about dollar for dollar with the US currency in 2019. So we're talking about a good price. I love my dog. She's great. Can you get my dog out of that? I love her. Somebody pulled up the horn outside. She wants to be in the video too. But yeah, it's about that idea that if you're going to be a part of this, there's a carrot at the end of it. There's a reason to be involved as an entrepreneur, or even if you're just doing a green business and you've already got a blockchain, you've got experience in blockchain or web building, definitely come and see me, because there is a really good potential for what we can achieve here, and it wouldn't take much. It's so close to success.
Let's take a moment for a brief promotional break and talk about the state of our world. There are famines, floods, and fires in our backyards, a global recession affecting our economies, and war and conflict tearing down our relationships with one another. You see it in the news, feel it in your wallet, and talk about it in your social networks. It's hard to think that it doesn't affect you in your personal life and bring you down in your work. Except you want to regenerate our lands, turn our economies into circular ones, and do it in collaboration and community with others. How are you supposed to do that when it seems like everyone's working against you? You're an entrepreneur and you have a business that's going to help us solve these problems and bring these solutions? You're telling me you're going to change people's minds and raise capital for your cause and bring in triple bottom line profits? You must be an optimist, a dreamer, or completely out of touch. Who's going to buy your products or services, take you up on that offer, or help you fund your do-good business? We will. Who are we? We are the Regenerative Business Economies Network, a connected group of impact entrepreneurs, peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenerative enterprise building. Together, we take on the financial and personal risks of building regenerative enterprises. It's all of us together that creates the change we want to see. We must believe in each other and the work we've devoted ourselves to. If you want to be supported and also lend support to impact entrepreneurs like yourself, follow the promotional link in the podcast description or head over to seedsoftao.com and click on Join the Community. With that, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, well, and let's talk about this for a moment as well, because I strongly believe that this is going to be a huge booming market. It has such latent potential right now and there are people moving into this space, right? We've had a couple people on the podcast already. We had Green Stand, which is kind of taking it from a for-profit and nonprofit side of things, but they are similar in a tracking process, right? They're tracking trees. They're doing it from a citizen science point of view, and they're kind of giving their source code out, and they're helping people to be able to track trees and be able to track growth that way, right? And so they have an app called Tree Tracker, and it's picked up steam in some ways, and it has a really, really strong. And I think this would be really helpful for you, Michael, as you're building out. Is I don't know if they were coders originally, the founders. I know an early employee there that is a coder, right, and a software guy. But the community that they built is a lot of a lot of donated time into building up this platform, right? Because this is going to take a lot of development hours to kind of keep this running, right? At a point when you start getting it going, automizing that kind of citizen science-y data endpoints that you're getting. I don't even know if that's not even a word that I'm creating here, but you get the point. There's these pieces, and that's one thing that Freestand is implemented, is having a really good software engineering and development side of things, where they're kind of crowdsourcing that need for developing the right code to be able to track and have all the data points that you need to track this type of work, right? So there's that piece. There's also another one that I think there's going to be so many different touch points and data points that we could collect on how we attach green regenerative resources to the economy. And we recently had someone on the podcast that was working on bee data and using bee data to be able to understand what's happening in a certain area, right? From a hive. So Hive Tracks is that company, right? But they have a piece where they can also attach with a company like yours to a currency that's building out, and work alongside these pieces of attaching the natural capital that we have to our current currency systems, right? So I think this is a really fascinating time, and I love that you're working with it with the passion and that startup mentality. I'll code it myself if I have to, right? That's the mentality of a true entrepreneur who's passionate about creating change. The question that's coming to my mind that I hope will kind of help us to gain a better understanding of what you're going through as an entrepreneur is, you have all these pieces kind of coming at you of what you need to build this business, and they're kind of the analogy that I've used a lot and have seen in the entrepreneur space is you're basically changing your tires while you're driving your car, right? And there's a meme out there that's showing someone up on two wheels driving a vehicle. Well, the passenger, someone in the vehicle, is changing the tire, right? And that's what we're doing. So how do you manage that currently in your business? And what is it that allows you to, despite all the craziness, because we know how a startup can feel, and how isolating it can feel, to be the first one working on a project like this? How do you manage that in your personal life?
I'm blessed. I have a great wife and a great relationship with my wife. I'll give you one tip going before you start something like this. Living beneath your means as a habit is important, regardless of what you want to achieve. You know, a lot of the tips are go out and borrow $10,000 and have at it, and that might work. And I'm pretty sure more times than not it won't. But I'm not against it. But be aware. Look at your worst case scenario and can I live there and be okay with it? That part of it, and being okay with failing is another one. Like being okay. Look, I'm doing this because I love what it is and what it could do for the world. I'm hoping to help people I will never meet. This is the dream. This is what drives me in the morning. You asked what got me up in the morning. It's that idea that I could actually do something useful for the future of the world. And that gives you something to live for, something to be passionate about. Don't listen to the people who keep saying no. I know that's a cliche. You can't do this. They will tell you that, and it's because they can't see your vision. And I regularly, not now, but in the early stages, I spent like 18 months, nearly 2 years, just trying to write an idea into some sort of a business plan. And I would spend like a week, 2 weeks on a piece of the puzzle. And then I'd go out and I'd talk to anybody in my community that would listen. I would literally talk to anybody. And you'd be going through, you go through your elevator pitch, and they go, what about this? You know, and you go, oh crap. And I go home and I start writing again. But going out and talking to anybody that will listen, I for me as a people person, highly recommend it. If you're an introvert, it might not be so much fun. But but when you start getting more positive feedback than negative, when you start, people like what you're doing, the chances of it being successful get better and better the more people who like the idea. I mean, I was lucky because I'm not trying to build this to make me into a millionaire. That's not the point. I was trying to build something that's appealing enough that people would want to be a part of, and it ticks the boxes on environmental and community. And that part of it, that finding your niche solution, part of the problem that you can offer, that it's only a piece of the solution. I mean, if we can fund this part of it, like I said before, the puppet move the body of the puppet and the arms and legs will move around it. Like the economy, the community, and the roots underneath all of it will move when you move the body. So if we move the body of this future towards green and abundance, we can drag everything else along with it. And that's that mentality. If you're going into like any sort of regen ag sort of thing, you've got to move your body, but you've got to support that on a budget you can live within. And I'm blessed. My wife, the first few years, like I said, I had an accident. I wasn't working, and I could have just gone and got a job, but I had a choice. I mean, could I be happy as a barista? Probably. Would I regret not having a go at this? And at the end of the day, I would. Yeah, that's knowing the moment I realized what this was. In the middle of everything, I was actually in the middle of I was doing Savory's holistic management courses. He's got a series of courses in there, and he talks about wholes. And you're getting it. You go in the beginning. You're going, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? And then you go in the middle there somewhere. You go, oh, the right behavior at the right location for the right reason is the answer. And then the scale of that hit me, and I realized what it was. And then I applied that, sort of grew through. If you can change the entire world to this regenerative scenario that we're trying to create as a community, they're grassroots community that is changing environments and permaculture, holistic management, and leaky wares, sand dams. There are so many versions of little pieces of the puzzle that are coming together. Just dig it. I love those guys. There's a guy in New Zealand who started letting the gorse grow, which is a noxious pest in New Zealand. But his theory was that the native species would use it as a nursery and grow up through it and eventually shade it out. And he was proven right. Wow. But he was doing that was like when I was 7, 8 years old, and he's still going, he's just incredible, this guy. But the thing is, these projects, how do we support all of them going forward? How, that dedication, and he funded himself and worked his way through it. And that budget, and just keep moving forward. And the question is, maybe you set a date. If it doesn't work, if nobody will listen to you, and it absolutely cannot be done, have the guts to stand up, walk away, and go, it did not work. Do your analytics. Why didn't it work? What was missing from the puzzles? And if you cannot fix it, talk to a few people. And if nobody can fix it, maybe it's a puzzle that can't be fixed. But maybe it will give you the inspiration to write something better. Or maybe you'll inspire somebody else to do it better. I mean, worst case scenario, my whole life I've trained and worked on things and found myself giving somebody else the tools to go and do it better. And I'm okay with that. I think that's great. I mean, if you can have a conversation with somebody who's in a dark place that puts them back on the cloud and they can start moving forward again, that's great. Or if you can have that conversation that puts a smile on somebody's on their face as they move forward, or you supported them in their business. Look around your community. Who can you support that is doing something similar to what you're doing? Because they've got knowledge you need and they need support from you, and vice versa will come around,
I like that, Michael. It's really there's a lot to unpack there with your startup journey. Is really true to so many of us going through our own startup journeys. And having gone through a couple of these myself with a branding agency, a photography business, a media business, and then now coming into this business, I've seen it looks a little different each time, but you do get similarities. And one of those similarities that I'm seeing with each startup is what you mentioned about first really truly understanding like what can you possibly, like what's the worst case scenario? Like I think of that almost every single time. You mentioned it for a blip there, but it's something that really truly resonates with me is like, what's the worst case scenario? Like, am I going to lose my house, lose my wife, lose my children because of this business idea? I guess there's a possibility, right? But how much of a possibility is that, right? You said you have a wonderful wife, and that relationship that is going to either be strengthened or it's definitely going to be challenged through this venture that you're taking on. But it has this great potential to be strengthened and increased and grow. And so there's the looking at the very worst case scenario and the entrepreneur thinking. And Michael, I know you've had this in your head. Am I okay if everything just goes down the gutter and it doesn't work out and I'm set back maybe 10 years or 5 years of my life, right? Am I okay with that, with the work that I did? And you've said yes. So you're going to be okay with that. And that's the worst case scenario. So what if he even goes, 25% right or 30% right, or heaven forbid, 80, 90% right, seeing what the potential of what you're building and thinking the opposite now, I think is a really good point in a very early stage thought pattern of what you're working through, of saying, what if this goes horribly wrong? And then on the other side, what if this goes horribly amazing and right and could really make the impact that we want? And I see that with what you've been building. So we are kind of rounding out this conversation, and it's been a great one. And I want to continue this conversation. So we do welcome you back on the podcast at any time, and we want to see how you're doing and how things are progressing and what new challenges that you're tackling, because it gives us a different perspective each time we talk with you, Michael. But right now, I want to kind of lead us into the final part of our conversation, which is, what would you hope from your story and the current journey that you're on right now, what would you hope the entrepreneur takes away from this conversation for their own benefit?
Okay, for like the green entrepreneurs, I would
for the regenerative entrepreneur.
Yeah, for those guys doing that sort of stuff, I would love them to know that there's somebody working on a way that we can make money literally grow out of those living environments without a product leaving the site, without a remote place that has no hope of selling a product or getting a tourist to visit. Could one day that restoration work could be fund itself into the future? That's what we're working towards, and that's anywhere. That's sort of that idea that if enough people doing the same thing, restoring lands, could buy, sell, and trade between one another, we don't have to ask governments for this. We don't have to. We don't have to apply to be, vetted by some big corporate opinion of what the right behaviors are. If you're successfully rebuilding living environments, this idea could make that profitable anywhere. And that idea is what we're trying to offer, is hope. I mean, hope for the future, that caring for and rebuilding living environments could become its own career path, is what we're trying to offer. And they're trying to do this for their kids. They're trying to do it for a future that they want to see. And that dream that rebuilding and caring for living environments should be profitable is a part of every regenerative person's business model in there somewhere, is that their kids are going to be able to do this for a living in the future, is a part of what they're hoping will be there. And if enough of us work and do this, it will be. Despite big corporate, despite big business, despite the government and their third industrial revolution, a global community all working together can change the world regardless of what the gods at the top are trying to do to us. We can make this happen. I believe that we can. And I'd say just keep doing it, and watch your budget. That would be my number one, is live beneath your means. It's hard to do on a day when you've got no money at all, but look around at that point, look around and see what you can get for free when you ask. I'm not saying steal stuff here. I'm saying, what can you get for free? And you'll be amazed how many people will give you seedlings, cuttings, and those sorts of things to get you gardening for nothing. It's about reaching out and talking to community and seeing what other people are doing, I guess.
Yeah. There's a quote that kind of comes to mind that's someone, and you almost gave it in in the context of building this. I'm not even sure if that was influenced, but Margaret Mead said this quote, right? Is you know the one, you're shaking your head.
I know the quote. I know who she is.
Yeah. So it's never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has. And who more recently mentioned that to me. We had this conversation before the podcast of just not remembering names. I'm spacing on the name right now, but it's a wonderful quote, right? And it truly is. If we can offer that hope to more and more people to get involved in that transition and move away from these extractive systems that we've been dependent on. It is a huge heart-opening moment for a lot of us, right? To be able to say, we can move towards a better future, that our economy can be tied to something that really is of benefit for ourselves, for future generations, for our planet, for biodiversity. It is a beautiful hope, and there is someone working on it. I know there's many of us working on that hope, and many people listening. If you think that you are wanting to get involved in this work in whatever capacity and skill set that you have, or want to build that skill set, yes, get involved at whatever capacity you can at this moment. So Michael, thank you for sharing your story. Last question here. How can we stay involved in it, and how can we follow, and maybe is there an ask that you have for the community of listeners? Share with us.
Okay. You can find information about GC Dollar on our webpage, which is gcdollar.com. And that's DOLLAR.com. And we have a video game for sale. We actually have a video game we had built. It's a fun little fundraiser. It's good for kids or adults. There's nothing, no gore, no horror. It just demonstrates the idea that rebuilding living environments should be profitable at the same rate in all countries. It's cute. It's fun. It's called Global Climate Game. You can find a link to it on our webpage. It's available on Google and Apple. As many people as you can buy a copy for us, because that at the moment is our lifeblood of fundraising coming in. And we will have a donation portal. Anybody who wants to give, I would be grateful for anything coming that way. And if you have skills in the areas of like blockchain, web pages, I could do with some help. So please reach out if you're willing to join up. They're the things I'm looking towards at the moment that need. And I would love the support. I'd love, and just spread the word that this is one more thing you've heard about that is making it better for the future. I mean, the more people who have hope drives change in so many ways. It's hard for people who have no hope to bring forth better things. If all you're thinking about is starvation and hard times, it's really hard to be creative and problem solving. But giving you hope can clear your mind and make it possible for people to dream of a better future. And a lot of change starts with that idea that it can change and being able to go and do it. And that's a part of what this is about, is making sure that there's hope for people. I mean, the idea that communities living in the middle of a rainforest in the middle of absolutely nowhere could get hold of a currency that is, that they could earn at a rate that might be on par with what they could get in the city. That local knowledge on how to care for the forest becomes the reason that the kids stayed, not just because they knew it was the right thing to do, but because it was a future that had potential, and the knowledge has value in the modern world, not just because it saves the forest, but because there's an economic driving force behind the choices kids are making these days. I mean,
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I hope people come and find me. I need a bit of help, but it isn't that much. I mean, we have so much work done. We are so close. So it's not an impossible task I'm trying to get through. There is so much of the work that is done. I was going to show you a little bit on video of that you can actually see the currencies. We've got an exchange rate for over 170 countries' currencies around the world, working through a double face. So you can put Australia on one side, American on another side, and you can see the currency at the top, and it'll tell you what the value is and the exchange rate between the two of them. So you know how much it was worth in local currency as well. So that's working.
And we can share that with our listeners as well, and in the show notes. Is that on your website?
Not yet. That part's on the big web page that's not quite finished, but I'm working out how to get some of those little pieces into the little web page for the time being. But yeah, there's screenshots at the bottom on the little web page that show different parts of the new web page that's getting built. Yeah, it's just learning how to cut and paste that thing across web pages. I'm still, that's a new thing I'm learning this week. So yeah, up until like a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I hadn't really done anything in web page design, but I'm learning fast. So
Yes.
I'm fine with that. It's going to be great. There's just, I love a new learning curve. Like I said, a lot of yelling and screaming and cursing and swearing, but I'm going to do it anyway. At the end of the day, I go and do it anyway. It's just the process I go through. So, and it's worth it. This I love learning new stuff. So this is, and I'm looking forward to the community growing around an idea that's there for community. My ultimate goal is to not be important enough that this thing just happens without me or alongside of me. I would happily be the guy they don't remember as long as the idea survives.
Wonderful.
That would be.
I hope it's you accomplish this, and let's think of it that way, right?
Yeah, that's it. And make it happen and just fade into the distance would be great. That riding off into the sunset, that's that. Rides off into the sunset.
I'm saying do credit as well, Michael. We want to pay credit as it comes in too. But I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in that spirit that you have and that hope that you have to make it a lasting power. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with us. I know it's especially I have a really hard time getting early stage entrepreneurs on the show because a lot of times they're afraid to share the what's behind the curtain of a startup in a lot of ways. And I know, Michael, that is not the case for you because you're willing to ask the hard questions and get the feedback from others around you. And that's a strong skill set for an entrepreneur to have as they move through those early stages of validating their idea. So I thank you for that, being open and vulnerable enough to share your idea, get it out there in the world. It's an amazing project that you're working on, and I want to see it succeed. If anybody listening on the podcast has any of those skill sets in blockchain, web development, coding, very much needed. Donations. There's ways that we can fund this growth and help Michael along. Please join us in the Seeds of Tao community. You can reach out to Michael that way. You can also reach out to me and get emails. Whatever way you want to reach out to Michael directly, we'll have those in the show notes as well. So yeah, keep on growing. everybody out there, keep on growing your garden, keep on growing your livelihood and your mind, but most importantly, keep on growing your regenerative business. So we need those enterprises that working good into the world. Thanks again, Michael, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation. I love good conversations. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate what you're doing for, the community. The whole world community we all need this. We need people like you doing what you're doing as well to get the stories out there and get people talking. So thanks. You.
Bye for now, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as RegenBen, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. RegenBen also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.